Well, we wrap up Esther tonight. So we're in chapter 9. We're almost done. The story is pretty well told at this point, and now it's just kind of the wrap-up summary, the concluding remarks, if you will. But evil Haman's plot has been revealed by Esther. The Jews are able to defend themselves against their enemies. There's a great slaughter in the kingdom, and the Jews prevail. And now Haman is hanged. His sons are killed, and then they're hanged as an example to anyone who would rise up against the Jews. Is that thunder? What am I hearing? Okay. Is that what it is? No. That's all right. Yeah, don't open it. Don't open it, Charles. No, because, well. Yeah, let's let security look at it. We're not going to open this door. Okay, let me get my train of thought back here for a second. So Esther has become the heroine of the story. Mordecai is raised to second in the kingdom, and a day of proclamation is a day of feasting and celebration is proclaimed for all of the kingdom. So that's where we left off. I'm in chapter 9, verse 20. Mordecai wrote these things and sent letters to all the Jews near and far who were in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, to establish among them that they should celebrate yearly the 14th and 15th days of the month of Adar, as the days on which the Jews had rest from their enemies, as the month which was turned from sorrow to joy for them, and from mourning to a holiday, that they should make them days of feasting and joy, and sending presents to one another and gifts to the poor. So the Jews accepted the custom which they had begun, as Mordecai had written to them, because Haman the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of all the Jews, had plotted against the Jews to annihilate them, and had cast pur, that is, the lot, to consume them and destroy them. But when Esther came before the king, he commanded by letter that this wicked plot which Haman had devised against the Jews should return on his own head, and that he and his sons should be hanged on the gallows. So they call these days Purim, after the name Pur. Therefore, because of all the words of this letter, what they had seen concerning this matter, and what had happened to them, the Jews established and imposed it upon themselves and their descendants, and all who would join them, that without fail they should celebrate these 2 days every year according to the written instructions and according to the prescribed time, that these days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation, every family, every province, every city, that these days of Purim should not fail to be observed among the Jews, and that the memory of them should not perish among their descendants. Everything okay out there? Okay. Verse 29, then Queen Esther, the daughter of Abihail, with Mordecai the Jew, wrote with full authority to confirm this second letter about Purim. Mordecai sent letters to all the Jews to the 127 provinces of the kingdom of Ahasuerus with words of peace and truth, to confirm these days of Purim at their appointed time, as Mordecai the Jew and Queen Esther had prescribed for them, and as they had decreed for themselves and their descendants concerning matters of their fasting and lamenting. So the decree of Esther confirmed these matters of Purim, and it was written in the book. All right, let's talk a little bit about Purim. I gave you, by the way, in the material that was available tonight on the table, a handout on Purim that will give you probably more information than you ever wanted to know about the holiday of Purim. If you were, and I know many of you were, going through our study of the Jewish festivals that we did, I don't know, it's probably, was it a year ago? I don't know, time runs together on me. But anyway, if you were part of that study, you got this handout. But I know some of you weren't part of that study, and I know that even if you were and you got it, you've slept since then, and you might not be able to put your hand on it. So here's you a fresh copy of that. So let's talk about Purim just a little bit, because Purim is the holiday that comes out of the story of Esther. So when is it celebrated? Do what? In the dark? Oh, they said in the dark. Well, there's a party all night long. Yeah, it's a dark. So it's around this time of the year. Remember, Jews follow a lunar calendar, so it's not going to always be the same time every year according to our Gregorian calendar, but it's going to be late February or early March. So it's kind of an early spring holiday. What's the significance of Purim to the Jewish people? Purim comes from the term pur, which means what? Lot. They cast the lot. So it commemorates God's deliverance of his people from their enemies through Esther. Now, how was it celebrated? They do. That's right. So it was celebrated in the time of Esther by a fast the day before. The fast of Esther was the day before the holiday start. And then on the holiday, they would read the book of Esther, the whole book. That was part of it. It was one of the, remember I told you when we were doing the Jewish festivals that there were 5 short Old Testament books that were all part of what was called the Megaloth. And each book was read at a different holiday. You remember that? Well, which book do you think would be read at Purim? Esther, right? That makes sense. They would exchange gifts of food. They gave gifts to the poor, much like we do at Christmas, although it's not so much material gifts, more food gifts kind of thing. Now there's some later additions to that. We'll get to that in just a second. Now Purim is sort of unique in that it is not a festival that's prescribed in the Mosaic Law. There's 3 feast holidays and 1 fast day that's prescribed in the Torah, the Mosaic Law. What are those? You want to go through them with me? Passover. Do what? Festival of Booths or Tabernacles, and the other one is Festival of Weeks, or we call that Pentecost. Right, so those are the 3. Those were the 3 times a year that all Jewish males were required to appear before the Lord in Jerusalem. But there were some festivals that were added and fast times that were added after Mosaic Law. Purim is one of those. Can you give me a couple more? Hanukkah is one. Yeah, Hanukkah is one. We're probably more familiar with that festival than most because it usually coincides around Christmas time. And so while we're celebrating Christmas, Jews are celebrating Hanukkah usually, or the Feast of Dedication. And the other one, the fast day, this one will get you. Yeah, you got it. I'm going to see if anybody else got it. This one will probably get you, unless you remember from when we did the Jewish holidays. The 9th of Ab was a fast day. Now, what did it signify? What did it commemorate? Right, the destruction of the temple. Right. You got it. Yeah. Way to go. I'll take Old Testament history for 5,000, Bob. So these are a couple. So Purim, Hanukkah, the 9th of Ab, these are festivals that came in after the law of Moses. And why were they not included in the law of Moses? Yeah, because they came about after, so that's why it took place after the time of Moses. All right, some later additions to Purim. So in the days of Esther, you get the fast the day before, you get the reading of Esther, exchanging of gifts. But like all holidays, things get added to them over the years. And so if you have Jewish friends and they invite you to a Purim party, then here's what are some things that you might expect. Somebody mentioned noisemakers, right? So that's part of it. Dressing up in costumes, much like, the tradition that we kind of, society kind of puts with Halloween, and you dress up in a costume. So you make noise. So you read the book of Esther, and you're supposed to make noise anytime the name of Haman is mentioned, to the point that nobody can hear the name Haman. It's kind of done like a melodrama where you cheer for the good guys of Mordecai and Esther. You boo for the bad guy, Haman. You dress up in costumes from the story of Esther. You're supposed to go. This is sort of how it's celebrated now. It goes beyond the limits of propriety. Now you take that for however you want to, but it is now celebrated that it is acceptable and expected to go beyond the limits of propriety, to have loud and boisterous merrymaking times to feel good, have fun, and be someone other than yourself. Well, our society ought to love Purim, right? According to tradition, you are supposed to be so joyful at Purim as to not know the difference between blessed Mordecai and cursed Haman. Now, I don't know that those are God-sanctioned ways of celebrating it, but that's how it's done now. So, who wants to have some fun with me tonight? All right? We're gonna do this. Now, I have a little. Who would like to work the noisemaker? Steve, you look like you want to work the noisemaker.
He just said he wanted to.
I thought he looked like a man that wanted to. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to read a passage from Esther, and I'm going to read from Esther chapter 3. And here's what we've got to do. Here's the part of it. All right. Whenever the good guys are mentioned, Esther or Mordecai, everybody has to cheer. Yay! Anytime the bad guy Haman is mentioned, then you have to boo. Boo! And Steve, you have to do the noisemaker, okay? All right? So, for the bad guy, that's right. That's right. All right, you ready? All right. After these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes who were with him. And all the king's servants who were with the king's gate bowed and paid homage to Haman. So the king commanded concerning him, but Mordecai would not bow or pay homage. Then the king's servants who were within the king's gate said to Mordecai, No, only on Haman. Why do you transgress the king's command? Now it happened when they spoke to him daily, and he would not listen to them, that they told it to Haman to see whether Mordecai's words would stand. For Mordecai had told them he was a Jew. When Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow or pay him homage, Haman was filled with wrath, but he disdained to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had told him of the people of Mordecai. Instead, Haman sought to destroy all the Jews who were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, the people of Mordecai. All right. More fun than you ever thought you'd have in church, right? All right. Hey. They'd run me off if I did it on Sunday morning. I can get away with stuff on the Wednesday night crowd. Y'all get snacks and noisemakers and all kinds. Don't tell the Sunday morning crowd how much fun we'll have on Wednesday night. They'll all show up on Wednesday night. There won't be enough Hamantashen to go around. So, all right. Do what? No. Yeah, because if I ever preach from Esther now, y'all are all going to stand up and cheer. Boo! Turn to Esther chapter 3. Boo! Yeah. Okay, so what holidays do we celebrate that would be similar to some of the ways that Purim is celebrated? Christmas, for sure. New Year's, to some extent. Halloween with the costume thing. Easter, okay, in what way do you think Easter? Egg hunting? Okay. Yeah. I mean, in some way, you got the noisemaker, man. So, yeah, I think, to me, I think of Halloween with the costumes. I think of Christmas with the gift giving. To some extent, New Year's in the sense of going beyond the bounds of propriety, which often Mardi Gras is another one that could and the whole be something other than yourself kind of thing. So yeah, I mean we have some equivalence roughly, but it is certainly a holiday unto itself. What themes that are present in the festival of Purim are relevant for Christians? What are some of the themes that Purim celebrates? Deliverance is a big one. You said take care of the poor for sure. Themes like choice, that God, the Jews as God's chosen people certainly applies to us as Christians as well. And the whole idea of for such a time as this, we've been placed where we are in our sphere of influence for such a time as this. And so the book of Esther is very relevant to us as Christians in the time that we live. And so the themes of Purim, which that celebrates, certainly would be as well. Questions on those verses? I'm not a Purimic. Courage, yeah. Yes, exactly. Absolutely. All right. Having not been raised a Jew, I didn't grow up celebrating Purim, so, I can't give perspective like, when I was a kid and we would dance around the Purim tree. I mean, I don't know, but I mean, what I know is what I've read and seen, other people that have do celebrate it, have put. All right, well, let's look on to chapter 10 and we'll get it finished up then. King Ahasuerus imposed tribute on the land and on the islands of the sea. all the acts of his power and his might, and the account of the greatness of Mordecai to which the king advanced. Yeah. You kind of scared me. I wasn't expecting that. I'm like, what is going on? Somebody's beating on the door, and then I've got somebody yelling from the crowd here. All right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I am. Verse 2, I think. All the acts of the power of his might and the account of his greatness of Mordecai to which the king advanced him, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Media and Persia? For Mordecai the Jew was second to King Ahasuerus, and was great among the Jews, and well received by the multitude of his brethren, seeking the good of his people and speaking peace to his countrymen. Okay, so here ends the book of Esther, and it's an ironic ending. How so? The book of Esther is one of, I think, only 2 books in the Bible where God is not explicitly mentioned, and yet we see God all over the book. We see his handiwork. It's ironic that the unheralded Mordecai becomes the hero, and Haman, who exalts himself, is humbled. So we see that great spiritual truth play out in the book of Esther, that he who humbles himself will be exalted. He who exalts himself will be humbled. Yes, Esther was humble as well. Yeah. Yeah, that's a theme running through the book, is the exaltation of the humble and the humbling of the proud. What other biblical characters does this remind you of the humble being exalted and the proud being humbled? Who? Joseph? Yeah, Joseph for sure. Who else do you see? Did you say David? Yes, David, the little shepherd boy. Paul. We're missing the big one here. Jesus. Jesus, yeah, for sure. Was Mordecai good for King Ahasuerus? How was he good for him? He did protect him. He saved his life by revealing this assassination plot. How else? That's a good point. He brought Esther into his life, which Esther was probably the best thing the king had going for him at that point. So that's a good point. Exactly. So what we've seen about King Ahasuerus as we've studied the book of Esther is that he was a poor leader. He had poor leadership skills, and so Mordecai, as now the second in command, he's able to come alongside the king and provide good leadership that the king really was lacking. And the person that the king had in that position, Haman, wasn't the person that he needed, but Mordecai is going to be that solid person to provide good leadership. And Mordecai, because he was God's man, and because God was blessing Mordecai, then by Mordecai being near the king, those blessings trickle down to him. That's another spiritual principle, that hang around God's people, and God's blessing of his people will trickle down to you. Boy, that sounds an awful lot like a prosperity preacher. But yeah, I'm not talking about, I've heard the deal, what is it, the Jabez prayer, or whatever, prayer of Jabez, where God just bless me a whole bunch so I can be a blessing to other people. I don't know. I think you got to be careful with that, because those can turn into pretty selfish prayers sometimes. But I do think that this idea that our life ought to be a blessing to other people. And so I want to be close enough to God that God's hand rests on me in such a way that not just I am blessed, but those around me are blessed because God's favor rests on me. So I think that is a good thing to attain to. Yes. Absolutely. And I tell you, my standard Father's Day message is usually something to the effect of, men, you will lead your family. God has ordained that you would be the leader of your family, and you will lead them for better or worse. And I've known men that have led their family positively in the ways of the Lord, and I've known that men that have led their family away from the Lord and been a poor influence. But you will lead your family one way or the other. Questions on anything in Esther, anything in the whole book? All right, well, how has God spoken to you during this study? This is what I always like to hear feedback from you of, this is what God said to me. Or maybe one thing that you learned that you didn't know before the study. You can't say that Brother Mark is a nut because you knew that before the study, right? So. You didn't know that? Yeah. Anything? Yeah, absolutely. God answers prayer with an exclamation point. It does. Absolutely. God has a plan even when you can't see him at work. What's it? There's a song like, when you can't see his hand, trust his heart. I always like the wording of that. So, yeah, he fights for us. Yeah. Don't mess with God's kids. He carried it out, didn't he? That's right. Well, I have enjoyed studying Esther with you. I hope it's been a blessing to you as well. I hope that you're going with us on the trip this weekend. We're going to get to see Esther put forth in a glorious cavalcade of sight and sound at the Sight and Sound Theater. Next week we'll start brand new, and you want to know what we're doing, right? Anybody want to take a guess? Oh. Yeah. I told you. Some of you, I think I may have told. No, not Job. I don't have the emotional stamina for Job. 40 chapters of, why is God being mean to me? I don't know. Okay? I have to work myself up for that. 1 Corinthians. We're going to do 1 Corinthians and probably do 2 Corinthians when we get done with that. So we're looking at 1st, 2 Corinthians next week. Come and get in on the ground floor of that. We're going to close in a word of prayer, and then Hamantashen awaits. How do you want? Okay, come see Lisa. That's the best way to do it. No, give me that back. If I ever, used to, I did children's sermons all the time, every Sunday. If we ever start doing children's sermons again, then I've got one right there, right? So, all right. Let's close in a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time. Thank you for this study and speaking to